you in the opposite direction, and you told me it didn't matter. I don't know. Well, you could get killed in an accident, in a home invasion. You could get killed in an accidental discharge. Yeah, but you didn't, or nobody did yesterday. There were actually people on Twitter, sending me this statistically insignificant thing because I had pointed out, and it's worth pointing out again, 9 people were injured on Saturday alone just from accidental discharges by permitted and trained concealed carriers in restaurants just on Saturday. Now, you can talk to me all you want about statistically insignificant. I've pared that down as narrowly as possible. Well, there's 300 million people in the country. There's 300 million guns in the country. What about the ones that didn't go off? What about the ones that were used to protect people, etc.? All right. How many guns were used on Saturday to protect families in restaurants in Kansas, in Wichita, Kansas, and Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I don't even remember what the other city was, Miramar Beach, Florida, if I have that right. I don't remember. Or take all of Florida and all of Kansas, for that matter. How many guns on Saturday were used to protect people in bars called Shooters or Shot Time on Saturday? And I'll bet you the answer is statistically a little bit more significant when it's laid alongside of the fact that 9 people had to get treated for injuries from guns that people had absolutely no intention whatsoever of discharging. They weren't protecting anybody. They weren't protecting themselves. They weren't standing their ground. They weren't doing anything. They just were regular, average, everyday citizens with 6 kids and a ginger gun-having beard who wanted to protect their families, but instead shot strangers who just wanted to have a freaking drink at a bar. And I got another story this morning, although this wasn't the same sort of accidental discharge, just sort of a gun accident nonetheless. Just random story from Texas. Probably won't even make gun fail because it doesn't quite fit the bill, although, maybe under the rubric of stray bullet. But a woman who went to a fundraiser, this is an interesting side story, went to a fundraiser for a family who had recently been the victim of a house fire. This is just another sort of general, undiscussed movement thing out there quietly. Of course, conservatives will say, it's neighbors helping neighbors. I say, of course, it is it taking a village, which you dismiss as filthy communistic crap. You just are, this is just neighbors helping neighbors. It's the same damn thing. You just don't like that Hillary Clinton said it, so it takes a village is disgusting to you. Neighbors helping neighbors is awesome to you. But I find this all the time, especially related to gun fail. I couldn't tell you how many times I come across gun fail follow-up stories. They don't make the gun fail because the accident was reported. I did it already. But then 3 months later, I happen in my search upon the same story 3 months down the road, and what they're doing is having a spaghetti dinner fundraiser for burial expenses for the guy who shot himself 3 months beforehand. Or medical expenses. I shot myself and I can't work because I shattered my leg. And I need the community, I need the village to buy a spaghetti dinner at $5 a plate so that I can raise $195 to get a special boot to put over my, leg cast or what. It's stuff like this. I see this all the time. And of course, that is taking a village, but no one wants to acknowledge that. Just like they love they love the effects of Obamacare. They just hate it because it's called Obamacare. Whatever. Anyway, by the way, if you were driving from Mountain Home, Arkansas to Michigan, and I guess it depends where in Michigan, but if you just put into Google Maps, Mountain Home, Arkansas, and Michigan, it will send you to where? I don't know. What town is this sending you to? You end up in what? What did they pick for Michigan? What's the heart of Michigan? I guess now I'm curious about that. Let's zoom in on that. It's up, it's north of Grand Rapids, sort of in between Traverse City and Grand Rapids. Looks like they stuck the pin west of Cadillac, Michigan. I don't really know why. So you're probably driving, I don't know, maybe he's going to the Upper Peninsula, perhaps. But at any rate, it's a long drive. The question is, where do you have to go that's so scary? I need a gun because I'm driving from Mountain Home, Arkansas, which, by the way, is a very high, north central Arkansas, right near the border of Missouri. So you got to drive through Missouri. That's pretty scary. The first sizable town, apparently, that you hit before getting on the next interstate is Rolla, R-O-L-L-A, Missouri, south of Jefferson City. At that point, you want to turn northeast and go to St. Louis. St. Louis. Do they say St. Louis? I guess they probably do. Then from thence north to Springfield, Illinois, then northwest to Joliet, and then into Gary, Indiana, which I guess could be a scary place. Lots of gun fail going on there. Then trace the Great Lakes, making a pass west of South Bend, Indiana, and up towards Grand Rapids. So depending where you're going, if you're going towards Detroit, Flint, whatever, then I guess you might take a slightly different route. You could go through Indiana, through Indianapolis and Fort Wayne, up to Lansing, whatever. But let me ask you this. Is that sort of the people say, what is that, Indian territory? You got to go on a wagon train and bring a Winchester rifle with you? What are you doing on the way? Granted, you're going through cities, and maybe people from Mountain Home are worried. Well, geez, St. Louis, Springfield, Joliet, Gary, we're going to be near Chicago and South Bend and to Grand Rapids. You know how cities are. People could get shot in cities all the time. It could be highway bandits out there, or you stop at some of these truck stops. I can agree that whatever. To me, I say it's statistically insignificant, the chance that I'll be robbed, beaten, shot, maimed, raped, whatever on my way from Arkansas to Michigan, because it's generally safe out there. Not rioting in the streets, but okay. Women, alone, who knows? Truck stops, I don't know. Maybe the guy's projecting, I have no idea. But at any rate, he decided that it's too dangerous for his wife to drive with his kids on their own, 7 of them together, from Arkansas to Michigan without being armed. So that's when he decided to research the law. And it's interesting, too. So his first research is, okay, what does Act 746 say? I've learned what Act 746 says. Note, by the way, once again, the route is Mountain Home, Arkansas. How long are you in Arkansas before you're out of there? Because it looks to me like they're about 10 miles from the border of Missouri. So guess where Act 746 doesn't help you in any way? About 10 miles into your trip to Michigan. But if you're going the other direction, fine. Then Act 746 is for you. But, all right, whatever. He says Act 46 is everything to him. So, yeah, he's researched it, and he's convinced he's right. And he wants you to know that he's right and that everybody in the group is awesome. So, he says Morrison is aware that at some point he might be arrested for openly carrying a pistol. He says he's prepared for that. Now, of course, why would he be prepared for that? Or why would he be aware that he's going to be arrested if he's read Act 746 and thinks it says that open carry is his right based on the text of the law? Why would he be arrested? He would simply say, no, Act 746 says I can carry. Well, okay. Oh, I do realize that the police think the opposite. But I'm prepared for that. Okay, he says, my family is prepared. The group knows of at least 3 attorneys that are willing to take the case, Morrison said. We have people who will help if someone becomes that test case. I don't want to be that test case, but you can't move things forward without being willing to exercise the right. Interesting. Of course, if the test case comes out wrong, were you exercising the right? That is the next question. But that won't happen to him because gun and awesome. And beard, apparently. Morrison said the group is composed of everyday people who want to protect their families and friends. And that's, probably true. They all want to protect their families and friends. That relates us to yesterday's story. I want to protect my family and friends. That's why I wear my gun to pick and save. 4 days later, well, not 4 days after the Pick and Save, but 4 days after his op-ed about being kicked out of Pick and Save, he is, in fact, wanting to protect his family and friends. And in his mind, Act 746 means XYZ to me. All right, great, but that's wrong. Well, protecting my family and friends means XYZ to me. All right, but wrong, because now you're under arrest. I was just protecting my family and friends. My friend was having a dispute with her roommate, so she called me for help. I like to protect my friends, so I brought my gun because dispute. Oh, well, actually, because I wear my gun everywhere, in case dispute. In which case I can protect my family and friends. And I protected her so much that the police said, you're under arrest. But all I was doing was protecting. Well, that's your idea. The rest of us have a different idea, and we're going to adjudicate that now. And you could lose. But Second Amendment, but nothing. You lose. We're going to actually ask a jury of your peers, and you lose. And you're charged with, what can I tell you? And then, of course, well, that's wrong, and we're going to overturn it, and that's where you end up with, that's how you get to things like down in Florida, where someone says, but Second Amendment, but self-defense. Yeah, well, you were overzealous in your self-defense, and you lose. Okay, fine. Well, in that case, I'm going to lobby to change the law and have a new stand-your-ground law that says I can shoot that guy, and that you can't even charge me. We don't even have to start off down this road because stand your ground. Well, I'm not so sure that that really properly balances public interest and private safety. Oh, yeah? Well, okay, fine. How about this? On top of that, if you try to change the law, I'm going to pass a law that says you get kicked out of office. Wait a minute, that's totally unconstitutional. Yeah, well, test it. Well, I don't want to be that test case. Now you know how I feel. I didn't want to be the test case for my gun thing either. Well, I don't know. Wait a minute, that's a little bit different. You didn't want to be arrested for being a test case for marching around with an openly carried firearm. I didn't want to be booted out of office and arrested for executing the office with which I have been constitutionally entrusted. That's a little bit different. If I clean my office improperly, nobody gets shot. There's a big difference between I want to exercise a charge I've been given constitutionally as an elected official, and I feel like carrying a gun because I'm afraid of what lies between Arkansas and Michigan. And when was the last time anybody was afraid of what lies between Arkansas and Michigan? I thought that was the heartland, where everybody is salt of the earth, and everyone just pitches in and helps one another because they love it. I don't know. Anyway, so more from Morrison here. Here's why it's okay for him to have his own interpretation of Act 746, different from the one that all the law enforcement officials in Arkansas have and that the legislature intended. It's okay because, quote, you don't have anything to worry about. Now, there's more to the quote than that, but doesn't that settle the issue? That guy says you have nothing to worry about. You know, in 6 months, we'll be having a spaghetti dinner to help reconstruct his femur, but you don't have anything to worry about. We are the good guys. We want to protect our communities and our families, just like the guy who was arrested the other day did. Morrison said, of those who will participate in the walk, officers can't be everywhere all the time. We are here to protect our families and anyone else who might need it. And again, noble sentiment, and I understand the drive, and I totally understand that, yes, you can't always depend on the police. And as skeptical as I am of guns and gun rights, I know that there is a possibility that one day I or anybody else listening to the show or not, or just anywhere out there, could find themselves in a situation where they say, damn it, I wish I was armed. Sure, absolutely. And that's what's driving these guys. But digging down just a little bit, officers can't be everywhere all the time. That's true. One of the places they can't be is potentially stopping another crime because they're busy telling you on the street corner that Act 746 doesn't say what you think it does. And I could be out there stopping real crimes if I wasn't actually stuck here having a constitutional debate with you because your beard told you 746 said something that the Attorney General says it doesn't say. But you got a nice hunting hat. So I guess I'll just sit here for an hour while someone's out there robbing banks or slashing tires or, God forbid, invading homes or for that matter, needs a ride to the hospital because they just shot themselves cleaning a loaded pistol across town on their way to the open carry walk because they wanted it to be shiny, whatever. But okay, you're entitled to your fair share of police resources too. We'll talk it out with you. But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those conclusory things. Well, you don't have anything to worry about because I'm telling you don't. All right. Don't call me when you need a life flight to the hospital, though. I don't have anything to worry about. Whatever. I'm not saying you're definitely going to shoot yourself. I'm saying you're probably going to shoot yourself. I am saying that. But I shouldn't. And I recognize that. It's statistically insignificant for me to say that. How's that? Local members of Arkansas Carry, just to wrap things up, will be holding a public meeting at 3 p.m. February 22nd at Sean's restaurant. First of all, sounds delicious. Second of all, open carry in the restaurant again. So February 22nd, that's this Saturday, folks. You know what happened last Saturday at the concealed carry restaurants? I'm just saying, watch out. Saturday, restaurant, Arkansas, open carry. You go if you want to. The gathering is a safety meeting, that's good, for the upcoming celebration walk. And again, it's a good thing to have the safety meeting. I just want to point out that everybody who's going to get there will not yet have had the safety meeting. They'll have safety in mind, but remember how many people I've seen shot in safety class. Just putting that out there. Anyway, so Morrison invited community members, that's nice, who might be interested to attend, as well as those who have concerns. That would be really interesting. Wouldn't it be wild to go there and have concerns and then have them get up in your face about how you have nothing to worry about and we're the good guys, belly bumping you about how you don't understand what it's like out there and what 746 really says and how the Second Amendment was really intended. I don't know that they would do that. I think they might have a polite debate behind podiums with glasses of water. But I don't know. Because not every time, no, total exaggeration. I'll say one time, a few times anyway, that we have read, I'm reminded of the few times, honestly, fairly, a few times, that we have read that when moms demand action or moms for gun sense or whatever, that I can't even keep the group names straight anymore or who it was, but when local groups get together to talk about gun control at a local restaurant for lunch on a Saturday, I find it interesting that the open carry people sometimes show up at that one with their rifles and have an AR-15 rally outside the lunch and shout at the people. I don't know whether they know who was meeting about what, or they just shout at everybody, or they pinpoint the local gun control, gun safety advocates and then harass them on the way out. But, we've read about that too. Or if you have a meeting or you protest on the street, I'm just going to have a counter-protest. It's just that my counter-protest is going to have guns at it. Because it's about guns. See, okay, well, I guess you got an issue to shoehorn the gun in there on. But, I mean, take any other issue. Okay, I think there should be a variance granted in order to build condos at this corner. I don't. Well, I'm going to show up and protest against the condos. Well, I'm going to show up and protest for the condos, but I'm bringing a gun. Well, that's weird. Okay, true. Well, I don't like guns. Well, I do like guns. Well, I'm going to protest guns. Well, I'm going to show up and protest you with a gun. That's weird. No, it isn't. We're protesting guns. It's still weird, don't you think? No. Well, see, we have a difference of opinion there. But that's how these things sneak in and how these situations end up getting out of control and why people who protest pro-gun rights and for open carry get treated differently by protesters and counter-protesters and police as well. All right, just to wrap things up here, because we really shouldn't spend this much time on Mountain Home, Arkansas. I'm sure it's a lovely place, but it's just one town. Anyway, so there we are. The group does not know yet where and when the walk will take place, according to Morrison, who said the group is working on that issue with Manuel. So they haven't decided where and when. They just want everybody to know that one day they're going to show up out there with guns. People are free to come to the meeting and ask questions, Morrison said. They're free. Yay for freedom. We would like people to come and see what we're about, to learn for themselves. And that's, it's probably true, but it's also kind of a throwaway line. We would like for people to come and see and learn for themselves. So you show up and then stroke your chin and say, I just want to speak up. I think this is a terrible idea for the following reasons. Well, communist, or they could, shake it. Why, thank you for your opinion. You're a very interesting guy. I'll take what you had to say under consideration. It could happen, but it's not likely to happen. All right, so having wrapped that one up, there are probably a few other little bits and pieces we could throw in there, and it might lead to some more discussion. Just to sort of round out the gun discussion for the day, though, I did pick this one up over the weekend. I had news about and I hadn't yet included that one in Gun Fail yet either because we didn't have the details, of a 15-year-old girl in, pick a state, any, just don't worry about it, just pick it out of here. Is it Arkansas? Were you thinking about Arkansas? Because I was. Yes, Little Rock, Arkansas. 15-year-old Adrian Broadway and her friends were pranking a neighbor in Little Rock, Arkansas around 1 a.m. Saturday by putting eggs, leaves, and mayonnaise, or making egg salad with leaves, could have been lettuce leaves, on his car when he came out with a shotgun. And, maybe you're inside, you don't know what's going on, it's 1 a.m., blah, 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 your car is pretty valuable, someone might be breaking into your car, you come out with the shotgun. So what ends up happening? Well, when the teenager and her 6 friends tried to drive away, 48-year-old Willie Noble shot at the car, striking Broadway in the head and killing her. So all I knew from the story over the weekend was that the kids were pranking somebody and somebody came out with a shotgun and shot and killed this kid. And we weren't sure what the prank was. Like if the prank is, I was lighting your house on fire, that's not a good prank. But this was a standard egging. It sounds like, although mayonnaise, I wouldn't have counted as standard egging equipment. But like I said, egg salad. There could have been hard-boiled eggs. We need more detail. I just want to study the act and find out what happened. My interpretation of the pranking act is that was okay, but this gentleman obviously disagreed with me. No interracial tensions element to this one. I came out in the context of waiting for the Dunn trial to finish up. But as it happens, black teenager and black shooter. Not that removes race as an element. It just relieves us of worrying about whether or not it was a white shooter and a black teen target. There are race issues wrapped up in it nonetheless because, of course, we could be talking about an entirely different approach to personal property safety and what it means to be being pranked by these local kids. Not so much necessarily because of the color of their skin as where they live, but whatever. At any rate, for those of you who are wondering, no, it wasn't an cranky old white man shooting a black teenager. At least we have that. Instead, cranky old man shooting teenager, period. And, the big problem with this one, of course, one, no major property damage as far as I can tell, although I suppose if, maybe he caught her, the mayonnaise, she had the hood open and she was putting mayonnaise on his spark plugs. I'm doubting it. I'm thinking they were, dirtying up the car. And so what he would need to do here is wash the car. Now, so it could be a big pain in the neck to wash the car, but I don't know about shotgun pain in the neck. He might have thought they were trying to steal it, though. But once it was clear that they were not, and they were retreating, see, this is the problem with, I think, with stand your ground gun laws. Not necessarily what it actually permits, though there's a big theoretical problem with that. We're constantly reminded, for instance, by certain correct critics that, for instance, even with the Dunn shooting, stand your ground isn't really the defense being asserted in the strictest sense here. My big objection to stand your ground, though, is that because I can see how many people misinterpret it honestly, and I have some idea of how many people misinterpret it dishonestly, And we've just been talking about how for some segment of the population, interpretation is just, hey, a personal thing. I don't know. I think Stand Your Ground says you can shoot anybody you don't like. Because it says I have a legal right, anywhere you have a legal right to be, so long as you feel your life is in danger. And of course, I'm sure that there are defense attorneys coaching people. Did you feel your life was in danger? Wink, wink. In other words, say you felt your life was in danger, whether you did or not. That's the first line of defense. If that doesn't work, then we'll just do straight self-defense, defense when it comes to trial. But if we can maybe avoid the whole thing, if you're willing to say you thought your life was in danger, and we can get people to buy the Stand Your Ground idea. Anyway, the big danger with this stuff is basically you got a bunch of gun people who are open to the idea, let's say, that their personal interpretations of the law are binding enough. Binding enough for me. I liked it, so I'm going to go with it. I think the law says it allows open carry. I wrote the law and I don't think so. Or I talked to the guy who wrote the law and I don't think so. Well, I do. All right, well, do we say here, we could just agree to disagree? Not really. Top law enforcement officials kind of have more sway when it comes to that, and the state has the right to arrest you and put you on trial for stuff like that. I guess you have the right to try to shoot somebody who does that, but whatever. Anyway, so here we have, I think, a person who might have gotten the wrong idea in their head that Stand Your Ground, A, applies everywhere. You'd be surprised how many people you run into who don't understand, well, Florida has this law. Arkansas doesn't, and you live in Arkansas. What? I thought it was a federal thing. I thought President Obama did. You never believe the kind of answers some people give about stuff like this. Or they just say, I thought it meant this or whatever. And, or I heard, my friend told me that Stand Your Ground means you can defend your property this way. And there are such laws, and I think Texas has some laws about the protection of private property. Generally speaking, the old common law and the castle doctrine things, well, it's one thing to fear for your life inside your own home, and they tend to let people make, to clear them of wrongdoing on the grounds of self-defense when someone has broken into their house at night. And it turns out that person isn't armed or didn't have any nefarious intentions. They're just in the wrong house. That does happen. It happened around here, right in my neighborhood, as a matter of fact. And you shoot them. And most juries and most prosecutors will, and the body of law in most states as well, at night, in your own house, this is understandable. Stand Your Ground is supposed to expand that. And, basically it vindicates the gun-having mindset that was way ahead of the state of the law. Well, if I have the right to do this in my house, one might say, why should I live in a society? Why should I be forced to live in a society where I'm forced to submit to thuggery if I just so much as leave my house? Why shouldn't it be the case? Why at night? Why not during the daytime? Why in my house? Why not everywhere I have a legal right to be? If, the thinking being, if I have a legal right to be here, then it's a violation of my legal rights for a thug to try to chase me out of it or harm me while I'm there. And, it's kind of hard to argue with that. In theory, you have a legal right to be there. Why should the law prefer it in a backhanded way if a thug decides to bother you on the street, as opposed to bother you in your house? Well, house, you've built it, you've established a perimeter and curtilage, and a man's home is his castle. That's where the castle doctrine thing comes from. Man's sidewalk in somebody else's neighborhood, not necessarily his castle, and so whatever. But, that kind of thinking then got expanded out in Texas. Well, okay, sure, if my life is in danger, but why should I be forced to live in a society then in which I'm forced to submit to thuggery if the thug declares he has no intention of taking my life, but instead has an intention of taking my car or lawnmower or wallet? Why should I have to stand for that? Why can't I shoot him? But for hundreds of years, basically, the answer was, well, property, it's nice, but it isn't life. And you can replace property. And it's really not something we want to encourage, to let people be freelance judge, jury, and executioner over property theft. Because then we got to start drawing lines, right? Is it okay to shoot somebody over a lawnmower? Not very expensive. How about a car? Well, that's a major investment. How about gold bars? Also even bigger. How about your grandfather's watch? Heirloom. Oh, emotional attack. Okay. That was my grandfather's lawnmower then. Oh, all right. So we get into all kinds of craziness, and it's better to draw the bright line between what life, I understand, property, I say, individual case-by-case basis, let's say. No, says Texas, I don't want nobody stealing my hat. I don't know. So now you're allowed to shoot people over hats. All right. What about if my neighbor is having his hat stolen and he's not home, but I am, and I see somebody stealing his hat, and that's not my property, and it's not my house, and it's not my hat, but I know that ain't his hat. Can I shoot him then? You know what? Sure, go for it. Now we have, laws that allow all this stuff too. Anything you can push through a legislature, I guess you gotta have you're gonna have to have that argument. Does this go too far? Is this too ridiculous? Should this apply or should this not? And then you end up with situations much less extreme, of course, like here with Willie Noble, who says, a bunch of kids has screwed me over here. And basically he's saying nothing different in a way than Michael Dunn is saying. Michael Dunn is saying, maybe for different reasons, maybe not. Basically his gripe was, you're not going to talk to me like that. You're not going to treat me like that. You're not going to intimidate me. You're not going to punk me with your music. I'll shoot you. And we rightly look and say, might there also be racial overtones here? Here we have a black shooter and a black teenager who got shot, but likely the same sort of sentiment. You're not going to get away with this, kids. You can't just come here and smear crap all over my car and get away with it just because you decide. Now you decide the jig is up. Now you decide you're finished with this. You should have decided that before you started. And I'll teach you as you're trying to escape, and I'll shoot you in the back of the head on your way out the door. Except you can't do that, because ultimately if you had caught them, right, if the police had pulled up right at that moment and stopped the car and arrested all of them, would any of them have faced the death penalty ultimately? That's kind of the starting point for the test, right? What would be the penalty for having put mayonnaise on your car? Practically nothing. Certainly not. You couldn't even shoot him in the leg, I swear. What are things coming to in this country if you can't maim a kid for putting mayonnaise on your car? But this guy decided different. Well, what's he going to say? Is he going to say, and he wouldn't get away with it. If he were white, he would have trouble getting away with. I was in fear for my life. They were in a car speeding away from you, armed with mayonnaise, and they might not even have been armed with that anymore because they put it all in your car. Well, I thought I saw a gun. If you thought that it was impossible to get to stand your ground / self-defense here, right? I thought I saw a gun. And that's all it takes. That's what it took for Michael Dunn. I thought I saw a gun. And those kids were getting shot no matter what happened. There was nothing they could have done once Michael Dunn basically decided he was pissed off to have escaped getting shot there. Really, honestly, turn down the radio. The move to turn down the radio looks an awful lot like the move to a glove compartment or the floor passenger compartment of a car to pick up a gun. So, because he's got a gun in his hand, lo and behold, he thinks everybody else has a gun in their hand. And there have been psychological studies on that. There's actual data. Yes, if you give two people objects and one of them is known to be a gun, and then you ask somebody what's in the other person's hand, the answer tends to be gun a lot more often than is actually true. But all I guess Willie Noble has to do is get a good enough lawyer who will tell him what you need to be saying here is that as they left, you saw them raise what you thought was a gun. You thought they were going to do a drive-by and shoot at you on the way out. Now, why they didn't shoot you up front when they were all out of the car I don't know. Maybe it was because their hands were full of eggs and mayonnaise and they had to run. That's it. They ran back to the car to put down the eggs and mayonnaise and pick up the gun. I came to shoot you, and I also came to spread mayonnaise in your car, but I forgot the gun back, and I'll be right back. Well, I'm not going to stand around and wait for that. Blam. So there you go. So I think that might be an interesting story to look at as well. And hey, how interesting that it also comes from Arkansas. Okay. Let's see. So there's been some interesting Twitter chat, and I guess we're stuck on guns for a moment. Let's see if any of it is any of it merits some further discussion. Let's see. Okay. Well, one is a guy who's upset about the use of the word accidental, and I have explained myself to him, and we're not going to be going any further with that one. Robert. I haven't heard from Robert Best in a while. He says he lives in Rolla, Missouri. That where was I forget where on the map Rolla was. Was that that's in Missouri. That's the first town where they get on Interstate 44, I guess, according to my Google Maps. So Robert Best lives in Rolla. He says it's a road warrior hellscape, and I believe it. So how's that for coincidence? Robert, I guess I would ask you, how dangerous is the stretch between Rolla and the Arkansas border? And I don't know that you've ever driven it. Have you? I can't imagine that there's a whole lot of reason to do that, but I'm sure there's beautiful, or maybe you're on your way to the open carry walk in Mountain Home, but you tell me. And how about between Rolla and St. Louis? Is that a difficult thing? This is, by the way, the entire drive, I guess, looks to be about 12 hours and 800 miles based on the destination in the middle of Michigan, which we don't know where they were going. But okay, how's that for a coincidence? I wasn't expecting that one. Good to hear from you again, Robert. Let's see. We also see... let's see. Oh, what's this story? Police, man upset with snow removal efforts, shoots at snowplow drivers. Okay, we'll have to take a look into that one. And let's see. Someone is upset and says, are you going to ban guns or frisk and search certain people? No, thank you for asking. David, who tweets as Reaper11B81. Yes, I am pro-gun. Burglars deserve their fate upon entry! ! Most libs and dems should sell or turn in their firearms before they hurt themselves or others. Obviously not a big reader of the gun fail there. Okay. Though I'm certain that some, and hey, maybe even all victims of gun fail are, by some strange coincidence, Democrats. But gosh, I doubt it. Okay. So what other items have we got to share? Oh, yes. Okay. Well, let's see. There's been some very interesting stuff in the last couple of days about, let's see. Here's a couple of different issues. One, in The Hill, Ben Goad, who writes at The Hill, had an interesting premise. I think we've seen it shot down a number of times, but basically writes in The Hill under the headline, "An excess of executive power?" ? Yes, this is, I guess, the new theme from the right, that President Obama is conducting power grab after power grab and just expanding the executive uncontrollably, which might even be true because it's largely true of almost every executive, and has long been my theory that executive power just doesn't shrink, doesn't ratchet backwards. At most, you might find an activist anti-executive president, should that ever happen, saying, I see it as my mission to freeze the expansion of executive power in place. Very rarely is it rolled back. Of course, mostly they're screaming about the possibility of executive orders being used to do anything that their obstructionism in Congress has not by itself prevented, or cannot by itself prevent. Of course, we now, I guess if you really want to make things interesting, we now find ourselves at this juncture essentially you could spin it this way. Barack Obama says, I read nothing in the equivalent of Act 746 to say that I can't do this by executive order. And Congress says, gosh, I don't see anything in the Constitution / Act 746 that says you can do that. I think you're totally wrong. And we'll have to adjudicate that in court. Except, of course, here we probably have Barack Obama saying, okay, I'm cool with that. And I guess that's the big difference here. That's what I've been talking about for the past 2 days. If you haven't picked up on that just yet, or I haven't made it clear, I should say, entirely possible. The last 2 days, I mean, I feel like we're hitting on interesting topics, but it feels a little babbly to me, I must admit. I hope it's making sense to you. But yeah, my general premise here is that it seems to me far more frequent and open on the right that they basically say, one, I think I'm right and you're wrong, and two, I don't care what courts say. They're not relevant to what I have to say about this stuff. And this has come up in the last couple of weeks too. Alberto Gonzalez has kind of joined the bandwagon in disapproving of President Barack Obama's exercise of executive power, which of course is a gigantic joke because he was at the forefront of the enormous expansion of executive power, or claims of executive power, under George W. Bush. And yes, the argument is easy enough to make that there's been a quantum difference in the kinds of expansion of executive power, but not across the board. It doesn't hold true across the board. It's just very difficult. I guess I will not declare it outright impossible because I'm open to somebody giving a shot at it. But for instance, the idea that you can declare anyone, including an American citizen, if you have the circumstances right, an enemy of the state and without any sort of judicial proceeding, if that person is, I guess, I don't even know what the extent of the policy is, but somewhere abroad fighting as part of a terrorist organization, you can, without any sort of judicial procedure or other due process, although they claim that all the process you're due is this executive authority to kill you. Yeah, it happens with a drone, but it doesn't have to happen with a drone. It can happen you don't want it to happen anyway, but it's certainly a lot easier to do with drone and seems creepier if you do it with a drone somehow. But I can't see any difference between doing it with a drone and a long-range scoped sniper rifle, for instance, except just that's not the way we do it. But yeah, it would be extraordinarily hard to argue that, well, that's not an enormous expansion of power. You could argue, well, that wasn't begun under the Obama administration, and it wasn't, but you can't point to much that would convince most people that the Obama administration has rejected the position outright handed to them by the Bush administration that this was permissible. They might have different guidelines, and I know they pat themselves on the back for the guidelines, and there's something to be said for some of the guidelines, but most people don't think it's solved the entire problem. But here's Ben Goad. This is an interesting opening to the article, and I think the article is a lot fairer than the opening, but whatever. President Obama's aggressive use of administrative power is testing the boundaries of executive authority on several fronts. Yes, of course, the whole premise here is that you're testing the boundaries of executive authority all the time. Obama, throughout his presidency, has pushed the envelope on recess appointments. I don't know that that's really true. Prosecutorial discretion, and the way his administration executes laws, drawing resistance from the other two branches of government. Really, though, throughout his presidency, he's pushed the envelope on recess appointments? All right. I mean, the sentence is constructed in such a way that there are other things listed there that you might have a better argument about him pushing the boundaries on, pushing the envelope on. But recess appointments, I don't really think has been the case. He's been brought to court over it, but I don't think that there was much about the way he did his recess appointments that pushes the envelope. The envelope has been pushed pretty hard on recess appointments for 150 years. And I don't think he did anything in particular much different or even approaching the edges of the envelope on recess appointments. It just so happens that he was the one brought to court on it. Well. Anyway, experts say Obama's tactics are not unusual. And note that he has issued fewer executive orders than many of his predecessors. True. But congressional Republicans counter that it is the content, not the number of presidential directives that has them up in arms. Also true. And also fair. I mean, the number is kind of a dumb way of looking at things, but whatever. Okay. Obama has made clear his intent to use every tool at his disposal to further policy goals in lieu of action from a bitterly divided Congress, pledging in last month's State of the Union to use his pen wherever necessary. Yeah. So, of course, that really riles Republicans. Why? He said he would use every tool at his disposal. Yeah. So we should impeach him. Well, wait a minute now. If the tools are at his disposal, then what would you impeach him over? Okay. Well, what you need to do, see, is argue that those tools are not at his disposal. That's your problem. But I don't see anything in Act 746 that says they're not at his disposal. Well, I do. Well, what is it? It's Benghazi. Okay. See, now you're just nuts. All right. In remarks Friday at House Democrats' annual retreat, Obama said he would prefer to work with Congress than act unilaterally. But I'm not going to wait because there's too much to do, he said, and America does not believe in standing still. In recent days, Obama signed an executive order effectively raising the minimum wage for employees of federal contractors, while his administration extended additional legal rights to same-sex couples and issued new banking guidelines for legal pot businesses, among other contentious actions. All modern presidents have done this, said Kenneth Meyer, a University of Wisconsin political science professor who has studied the presidency extensively. All presidents utilize the tools of executive powers to implement policies. It's what they do. It's the job description. To be sure, Obama is not the first president to be accused of overstepping the boundaries of his authority, a point emphasized Friday by White House Press Secretary Jay Carney, who said, "It's funny to hear Republicans get upset at the suggestion the president might use legally available authorities, when obviously they supported a president who used executive authorities quite widely." But the same point could be made in reverse. President George W. Bush faced an onslaught of criticism from Democrats in response to...
Welcome. You're listening to netrootsradio.com.
The quantum difference here is that the president is not nullifying laws passed by Congress. He's taking action that Congress refuses to undertake, under the clearer authority of legislation. But he's not taking enacted legislation and saying, I read Act 746 differently. That was the big thing. And I guess now we've fit that into the theme. Hooray! We finally found a way to connect these two threads. What George W. Bush was basically saying was, Congress has handed me Act 746, which doesn't endorse open carry. But I read it to endorse open carry, and with his signing statements, he would say, the policy of my administration is going to be that it endorses open carry. Essentially, that's the parallel argument here, the analog. He was actually ended up nullifying things. The Congress says X shall be the law, and I say that it shall not, for purposes of my enforcement of it. But essentially, he's just saying the opposite, and it's the same sort of argument. Once again, with Republicans saying, I just read the law differently. And again, also, I don't want to adjudicate it. I just want to be right. I brought up Alberto Gonzales before because he's apparently now in the cottage industry business of saying that Obama is overstepping his boundaries and blah, blah, blah. I don't know whether he's on an impeach bandwagon or not. But here's the thing. He currently, I guess, says that the federal courts could and should step in and rein in Obama's interpretation of executive authority in some of these areas. What's interesting is that Alberto Gonzales was notorious when he was Attorney General. Remember the fact that he was Attorney General of the United States? Isn't that amazing? When he was Attorney General, it was not only his opinion along with John Yoo that the president, as commander-in-chief in time of war, could basically order anything at all, no matter whether it was even hinted at in Act 746 or not. he could do what he wanted to because Commander-in-Chief. And that's just like a kindergartner's reading of the Constitution. But not only that, the reason I say Alberto Gonzales was particularly infamous is he was also infamous for saying not only can the president basically make up whatever he wants because Commander-in-Chief, but federal courts and federal judges are, by their very nature, not qualified to comment on whether or not he or I am right about this stuff. We write the federal judiciary, an actual co-equal branch under the Constitution, an article of their own, Article 3, out of the equation entirely because they're just not qualified to pass on my commanderness, basically. All right, well, that wraps up our show for today. Do stay tuned to Netroots Radio for the rest of the day. Coming up at noon, because it's Tuesday, the Kicking Ass Show today, in spite of the huge head cold that won't go away for poor Fripp. Well, he'll pick over the latest crash and burn of Brent Bozell and a big hodgepodge of other tasty news that's happening. He says thanks as always. We say thanks to him as always. Stay tuned for a great show. I'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for listening.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show with David Waldman.